Welcome back. Now, if you've read Denis Hirsons' earlier books, I Remember King Kong and The House Next Door to Africa, then you are in for a treat. The acclaimed writer has recently published a new book in the form of a memoir titled My 30-Minute Bar Mitzvah. This offering is a sensitive and beautifully written account of Denis's 13th birthday and how the world looked to this teenage boy in the Johannesburg of the 1960s. Well, let's now welcome Denis Hirson into this conversation, and he joins us now all the way from Paris via Zoom. Denis, a very good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning.
Now,
I just want to, before you start, I just wanted to say that this is Paris, and the streets were alive yesterday, not only because Morocco beat Portugal, but also later because France beat England, full of cars hooting and shouting and fireworks. We've had two celebrations in a row, yesterday and early into the morning.
I can imagine. I mean, the current reigning champions with the possibility of, going into the final really must be a cause for celebration all over France. I can imagine.
Really something, yeah.
Yeah, it really is something. Now, before we get into, the crux of the book, let's start with explaining what a mitzvah is.
So it's a bar mitzvah is something that a Jewish boy is supposed to have around about the age of 13. A girl could have a bat mitzvah at the age of 12 or 13. And it's a rite of passage into adulthood at the time of puberty. And it's something that many Jewish boys look forward to immensely as a celebration of what they are about to become in the midst of their family and friends and with presents and a great feast, etc.
Now, speak to us about why you decided to share your story through this book.
Well, something happened to me at that time, which was very strange on my 13th birthday. And perhaps you will allow me to read just the opening lines of this book to give you a taste of what it felt like at that time. Of course, I had a bar mitzvah. It took place on a cool, crisp afternoon in Johannesburg on the day I turned 13, towards the end of August 1964. There were 3 other people present, or 5, depending on whom one chooses to include. 5, let's say, the men divided from the women according to the time-worn tradition. There were no photographs, no gifts brought or made for the occasion, no singing or elevating sound. The ceremony lasted precisely 30 minutes, as had been agreed on well in advance, not a second longer. One of the people present announced the end in a voice as blunt as it was relieved. Did I cross the threshold into manhood on that day, as one is at least symbolically supposed to do? I don't know. I doubt it. But I did, at least in the wake of this event, begin to understand a number of things I had not been confronted with before. That's the opening of the book.
And the book is set on the premise of, answering the question, what kind of bar mitzvah lasts for, no more than 30 minutes? Tell us more about this.
Exactly. Well, this is the whole question. If the book reads to me like a detective novel, and if I were to tell you exactly what happened, it would be like starting to tell you the name of the killer before the detective novel really gets underway. So I can't fully answer that question. It's a mystery, and it's a mystery that I set out to solve in the course of this book.
Okay, so the book will solve this mystery, you say?
I hope so for the reader, yes, but you'll have to read it to find out.
Now, take us back to that 13-year-old boy and his worldview in general. I mean, what was going on through his mind at that time?
Well, let me say that I think I was a pretty normal 13-year-old boy. I was interested in rugby. I was interested in girls. I was a little bit oppressed by school. And then in the middle of all this, my father was arrested. And this was one of the key events in my life at that time. Was arrested for his opposition to the apartheid regime. And that changed everything. I've just read a writer saying that we are always the same age as the trauma that has hit us in our lives. And in a way, I'm still that 13-year-old boy, even though I am now the age that you can see, and the father of two children in their 20s and 30s. But at the same time, I'm also that boy, because trauma hits you in the gut in such a way, and in the mind and in the spirit in such a way that it never leaves you. So you've got to work with it, and you've got to transform it if you can, if you're lucky, and see what you can actually derive positively in the way of gifts from what might be one of the most terrible moments in your life.
That really is profound, Denis. I mean, speak to us about your reflections then and now, and how you reflect on your own past in this book. I mean, you mentioned the kind of trauma that you went through. I mean, have you healed from that trauma? And you also mentioned that you were oppressed by school. Was that a point of view of a 13-year-old boy who's just not interested in school, or was it simply a general overview that you took right through your life?
Well, I became a teacher. I love teaching. And there was always one or two teachers whom I loved at school. But I wish the system had been different. I wish there'd been more place for creativity. I wish there'd been more oxygen in the classroom, if you like. I think this is the experience of many people. And I know that I was lucky to go to a reasonably good school. Parktown Boys in Johannesburg, to name it. But I would like to read, would you mind if I read another little extract?
Yeah, please go ahead. But please be mindful of the time. We left with little time, but go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So I'm just going to read an extract from towards the end of this book, because my brother had a bar mitzvah, a more or less normal bar mitzvah, and he said that he thought I was jealous of the gifts that he had received because I didn't receive any. And I could have told him that I too had received a good number of gifts during my special birthday visit, enough to last a lifetime, though I was incapable of seeing them as gifts to begin with. Quite the contrary, since they were enveloped in a wrapping of separation and longing and loss. They were gifts, but of the kind that cannot be opened too early, like a fruit that is toxic if eaten unripe. So they had to be unwrapped slowly over time with care.
Right.
Some were not, however. They were opened too quickly, and I took their poison when I was too young to know that I should spit it out before swallowing. Yet even from that poison there was something to be learnt, and it was in the learning that I was given them as gifts. So they might be called lessons, shaped by the time and place where they were to be learnt as I came to the threshold of manhood.
Right. Now, Denis, this book is described as what? As an echo of a detective trail, that gradually reveals the answers as you explore the wider ancestral and the political strands of your life. Tell us more about this. Is this perhaps an accurate reflection or assessment?
I would say yes, it is. I would say that, if you like, thanks to this special bar mitzvah, I learnt much more about what was happening in the country. I was just an ordinary boy. And it was not an ordinary time. It was a time, as you know, of great oppression, when black people in the country were treated as less than human, when they were faced with conditions in terms of education and health and economics, which were just unimaginable to people in other places in the world at the time. And my eyes opened to the situation. Thanks to what happened to me at that time, and thanks to the arrest of my father, I had to look around me, look beyond the comforts of the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, and understand that there were many people living their lives in many different ways from the way that I was.
Denis, great chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. That's our Sunday morning guest author, Denis Hirson, and we've been speaking to him about his hot off-the-shelves memoir titled My 30-Minute Bar Mitzvah.